What is the bond between parent and child like? Is it about blood or living together? Beyond blood ties and cohabitation, perhaps the necessary condition is to respect each other and open our hearts. My name is Carly. I married my husband Harold when I was 20. I live in a rural town where many young people leave for the city. Those who stay are treated kindly by the community. Marrying a local man often means staying in town and eventually having children, contributing to the next generation, which is highly valued and welcomed here. In the city, getting married at 20 might seem early, but around here it's perfectly normal. Harold runs a company that sells local specialty products. It's more like a personal shop, just registered as a company, a small entity. I joined this company after high school, where I met Harold. His enthusiastic and positive personality drew me in, and I still vividly remember the joy I felt when he proposed. Harold has a brother, Connor, who inherited a pickle factory, a local specialty, from our parents. Connor has a son, Judson, but his wife passed away shortly after childbirth due to frail health. With a newborn to care for, we, Harold and I, did everything we could help to our brother-in-law, Connor. At 20, with no experience in childcare, it was overwhelming, but with my mom's help, we managed. Mom and the others said this experience would help with my future parenting, and indeed, it felt like I was learning everything from scratch. 2 years into our marriage, Judson turned 3. Over these years, I had become like his mother. It's strange how caring for someone can make you feel as if they were your own, even if they're not biologically yours. Harold also said he thinks of Judson as his own child. Although Connor always expressed his gratitude to us, we didn't live together, so the weight of parenting heavily burdened him. It was August, the peak of pickle-making season, and his exhaustion was evident. Harold and I were deeply worried about him. Then, our worst fears materialized. One morning, while harvesting pickles, an ambulance shattered the quiet. Connor had collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. When Harold and I entered the hospital room, we found Connor, already passed away, lying on the bed. He had collapsed from a brain hemorrhage, and by the time he was brought to the hospital, it was too late to treat him. Harold had been greatly helped by Connor and deeply admired his brother. Amidst our grief, we realized we had to think about Connor's son, Judson. Where was he now? We found him curled up and crying in a small room used as a storeroom. Instinctively, I hugged Judson. It wasn't a conscious decision. My body and heart just moved. Harold and I decided to become Judson's parents. We wanted to nurture and protect him, to help him forget his tears. Initially withdrawn, Judson gradually began to smile again, like melting snow. Having been a mother figure to him since his early years, it was incredibly fulfilling to now be his real mother. My brother, Audley, who had worked at Connor's pickle factory and was the production manager, was appointed as the acting manager by the employees and shareholders. Audley plans to eventually pass the company to Judson, fulfilling Connor's legacy. We don't know how Judson will grow or what his attitude towards work will be, but I believe Connor would be at peace with Audley's plan. Our family history continued to grow. Judson was thriving, and at the start of the year he entered kindergarten, I discovered I was pregnant. Harold jumped for joy, and Judson skipped around, excited about a new brother or sister. I was filled with joy and hope for this new stage in our family's life, caressing my belly with the new life within. Yet, I was unaware that, This new stage wouldn't only bring light. I gave birth to my second son, Stefan, safely. Pregnancy was full of firsts, causing worry for Harold and Judson, but seeing our son cry for the first time, their faces were all smiles, filling me with relief and happiness. Raising Stefan was a new experience from scratch, despite having raised Judson. Amid the chaos of caring for a newborn, I gradually noticed changes in Judson's behavior. As Stefan required more attention, inevitably, less time was available for Judson. He became sensitive to my stressed demeanor, likely accumulating his dissatisfaction. Sibling jealousy is common, but perhaps I underestimated Judson's feelings, lacking experience in handling such situations. Unable to ease Judson's feelings, things took a turn for the worse. "You care more about Stefan because he's your real son. I'm just in the way. I wish he was never born," Judson would retort. Each time I assured him it wasn't true, my words seemed to fall on deaf ears. His statement about wishing Stefan was never born shocked me, and in response, I reprimanded him harshly, but it only made him feel more discriminated against. The brothers' relationship didn't improve, and Harold and I were, admittedly, at a loss. Despite our efforts and trials, the situation didn't improve as time passed. Entering his rebellious phase, Judson barely spoke to Harold or me and seemed to be associating with a bad crowd at school. Ignoring studies and wandering aimlessly, Harold's concerns fell on deaf ears. On the other hand, Stefan was gentle and curious, actively engaged in his studies. We never intended to compare them, but Judson perceived himself as inferior, almost paranoid. When Judson was in his second year of high school, Audley offered him a part-time job at the pickle factory. Audley wanted to give him a chance to experience work and think about his future. Judson resisted at first, but after hearing about Connor and Audley's intentions, he reluctantly accepted. Despite initial complaints, Judson worked diligently. He still didn't study much, but started to distance himself from the bad crowd. A year later, Judson decided to work full-time at the pickle factory. "I hate studying, so I've decided to work. The pickle job stinks, but oh well." Harold and I, sensing his embarrassment, were happy, thinking Connor would be pleased with his choice. 1.5 years after Judson started his job, Audley came to visit Harold and me. "Judson's work attitude has worsened for a while now," he said. Audley wanted to discuss Judson's work attitude with us. Initially, Judson's tasks were simple, like carrying loads, but as a full-time employee, he was to learn pickle-making skills and management basics, like sales, accounting, and administration. However, he struggled with math-intensive tasks like accounting. Disliking studies from the start, he lacked foundational knowledge and the drive to absorb new information. This led to a lack of motivation, causing him to miss work and inconvenience colleagues. Audley warned that, if this attitude continued, Judson couldn't be expected to improve his skills, and the dream of him taking over the business seemed far-fetched. Harold and I knew we had to talk to Judson. Thinking about it, when was the last time we actually had a conversation with Judson? "It's none of your business. Why act like real parents? It's annoying." In the middle of our conversation, this is what Judson said. Harold, raising his voice, asked what it meant to behave like a parent. "That's right, you're not even my real parents. Enough, I'm leaving this house." With that, he stood up and stormed out of the house. Afterward, we heard he moved in with his girlfriend. Since then, we had little contact with Judson, only hearing about him through others. Audley reported Judson's work attitude remained poor. A friend of Judson's said His girlfriend worked at a restaurant where they met. A senior colleague mentioned Judson bragging about making a quick fortune. These snippets were all we heard. After a year of silence, shocking news came. Judson had married his girlfriend, and they had a son, named Leonard. More shocking news came from Audley. Judson abruptly quit the company. It seems he took some important information with him. I'm sorry I didn't inform you sooner, but given the circumstances... Audley explained that Judson's work attitude never improved. When he suddenly handed in his resignation, he didn't listen to any pleas to stay and stopped coming in from the next day. He was supposed to work for 2 more weeks for handover, but he ignored this rule, having used up his paid leave already. After his departure, a rival pickle company announced a new product strikingly similar to ours. It turned out Judson had joined them. And it wasn't hard to imagine he took our new product information as a bargaining chip, though we couldn't prove it. It's a regrettable lapse in our information management, Audley said, his face full of frustration. Judson hadn't informed us about his marriage, his child, and now he had put Connor's company in jeopardy. All attempts to contact him were futile. He had moved, and his whereabouts were unknown. Though we knew which company he had switched to, any attempt to contact him was like being turned away, as if the company had forbidden speaking out. The company already had a bad reputation in the area, so we were worried about what kind of job Judson might be doing. But it was as if our worries were needless given the complete lack of communication. We reluctantly had to give up on contacting Judson. Years passed, and Harold's shop grew into a general merchandise business, with our son Stephen joining the company. Stephen was talented and seen as a future president. Despite the product leak, Audley's Pickle Company developed new products and thrived, maintaining its reputation. Then, tragedy struck when Harold suddenly passed away from a heart attack. The unpredictability of life means we can't live fearing the future. But dealing with sudden events is always challenging. After Harold's death, I was busy with funeral arrangements and company affairs. Judson, out of touch for years, surprisingly attended the funeral. Afterward, he approached me. I heard Dad passed away. I thought I should at least see him off. So, about the inheritance, how much do I get? His sole purpose for coming was the inheritance, despite his long absence and disregard. You've been out of touch for so long. Unfortunately, you don't have any inheritance rights, I told him. Judson, angered, yelled back. We hadn't legally adopted Judson to eventually let him inherit Connor's house and pickle factory. Our surnames were the same, and nothing other than legal matters prevented us from living as a family. We never discussed this. You always thought of me as a burden. If we're family, then give me my share of the inheritance. After calming down a bit, he made a new demand. Give me the house then. My current place is being demolished. My family needs a new home. You have Dad's land and savings, and Stephen has the company. Give me the house. Harold, not foreseeing his own demise, had been preparing a will annually for the last 3 years. The will left the land, house, and savings to me, and the company's leadership to Stephen. I was also expected to serve as an advisor to the company. Judson, claiming to be mistreated at his current job with low income and a struggling family, tearfully pleaded for a place to live. I decided, as a final act of kindness, to give the house to Judson. I had been planning to move to the city for a new job and was deciding what to do with the house. Judson's crying face instantly turned into a grin when I agreed to hand over the house. "Thanks. Now, please leave soon. We'll move in right away." Stefan seemed discontent. "Is that okay?" he asked. "It's okay. It's the last time," I smiled and said. Though Judson claimed to be mistreated, my sources indicated he was financially well off. The nature of his work remained unclear, but it seemed dubious. I moved to the city quickly, leaving the house to Judson. My interactions with Stefan's company were easily managed online, and I was pursuing my own interests. Judson and I lost contact again. He seemed uninterested unless it suited him. A year and a half later, he unexpectedly visited me. "Wow, you live in a fancy high-rise. Great location," he said arrogantly, looking around. "This place is too much for Mom. My son Leonard just started college. We need a house nearby. We'll live here. You can have the old country house." His demand was outrageous, but I remained calm, suspecting he was up to something. But I never imagined he would come up with such an unreasonable demand. "Okay, let's swap. I'm happy to exchange," I replied. "Well, that's very understanding of you, thanks." The man, unaware of his lack of common sense, left with a skip. I felt acutely that my parenting had failed. I quickly packed and moved out the same day, going back to my beloved old house, while Judson moved into the high-rise. 2 months later, Judson stormed in, furious. "I've been ordered to leave the high-rise. It's being demolished." The reason I readily agreed to the swap was that the high-rise was soon to be torn down for redevelopment. I wondered why so many residents were moving out, and then suddenly the management company says we have to leave immediately because the deadline is near. Why did you keep quiet? "You never asked. I thought you knew," I replied. He raged, demanding the country house back. "This house is mine, left to me by Harold. Why should I give it to you?" The house was bequeathed to me by Harold, and I hadn't changed the ownership when I handed it over to Judson. Changing the ownership would mean a gift, which would incur a huge inheritance tax. When I mentioned this, Judson said he didn't have that kind of money. "Where are we supposed to live now?" "Before worrying about that, maybe you should be more concerned about something else. Though you might find somewhere to live soon, behind bars." Judson, stunned by my words, stammered. "You've been engaging in risky activities, and now all the consequences are coming back to you." He had been involved in borderline illegal information gathering, essentially spying, at his current company. He might have acted like a spy in a movie, but his actions were wrong and couldn't be justified. Furthermore, Judson had kept contacts at Connor's company and used that information for illegal stock trading, constituting insider trading a criminal offense. It was a crime that could result in imprisonment or a fine. The employee at Connor's company who was Judson's informant had already been exposed. Along with insider trading, numerous illegal acts have come to light. You're likely facing a trial and a certain prison sentence. Probation seems unlikely. For years, my work involved researching the pickle and general merchandise industries, reporting through trade publications. My network and contacts greatly aided this work. I had initially moved to the city to intensify urban research, landing Judson the house. But recently, the need to resume local activities prompted my return. It was amusing how conveniently Judson's demands fit into my plans. "My information network is accurate. You've gone too far. The companies and individuals you've harmed are joining forces to sue you. I dismissed the bewildered Judson from my house. He was later arrested and incarcerated. Judson's wife, deeply involved in the illegal activities, was also arrested. Their son Leonard's claim of university acceptance was a lie. He was actually a repeat exam taker. Unlike Judson, Leonard was earnest and serious. I discussed with Audley and agreed to employ him at Audley's company. Leonard, having a fend for himself with both parents imprisoned, showed strong interest in pickle making and was eager to learn. Audley privately mentioned that if Leonard developed well, he could possibly succeed Connor in the future. Arrangements were made to sever ties with Judson to prevent him from troubling Leonard. While Leonard's future is uncertain, there is a glimmer of hope, and I pray to report good news to Connor's grave.